Shalom from Israel, I'm Ariel Ben Avram. This week we read Parshat Vayakhel. Something like, and he assembled, like the congregation, like put together the community of Israel. So we read, and Moses assembled all the congregation of the children of Israel and said unto them, these are the words which the Lord has commanded that you should do them. 6 days shall work be done, but on the seventh day there shall be to you a holy day, a Sabbath of solemn rest to the Lord. Whosoever does any work therein shall be put to death. Okay, there's a lot of things, there are many things to say about these first two verses in the portion Vayakhel. It's interesting because the previous portion, Kitisa, and the portion before Kitisa Tetzaveh, they had to do with the high priest, had to do with the building of the tabernacle. And suddenly, God is telling Moses, tell the children of Israel, keep Shabbat. There's a 7th day that is holy, tell them. Nobody should work that day. If somebody does, he or she will be put to death. Now, our sages say that the Shabbat and the building of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle, are closely related. We have said before that the Mishkan, the Temple of Jerusalem, the tabernacle, represents our permanent connection with God. We also have said, based on the Talmud, that our sages teach that Shabbos, the Torah, Israel, and God are one. They like occupy the same space, so to speak. Just to say it in a metaphoric way. So that united in one. So we're talking about our connection with God. We're talking about that oneness, that unity, as long as we are connected to Him. This is very important, because if we're not connected, we're not part of that oneness, totality, completion, shalom, that is God. What represents as God, this oneness, this thing, so to speak, that contains everything and is self-contained in itself. That's the idea. So in our connection, we really, in the moment that we are aware, completely, fully aware of our connection with God, we are in Shabbat. The Shabbat is there. As well as the Torah and Israel and God. We're completely connected, united in that oneness. So there is a connection between Shabbat and the Mishkan, the tabernacle. However, there are also other meanings, other implications. Our sages say in the Talmud that the fact that Shabbat is mentioned here as a warning not to do any work is juxtaposed, it's exactly like in between the different kind of works that we have to do in order to build the tabernacle. So everything, 39 activities, labors that are mentioned in the Torah regarding the building of the Mishkan therefore, are prohibited to be performed, to be done on Shabbat. So that's why our sages say that the Shabbat is mentioned in the middle of the building of the Mishkan. So they immediately get the message. It's like what you work to build, the kind of labors that you do to build the tabernacle, my connection with you, says God to Israel. Those labors are non-existent while you are with me in Shabbat, says God. This is very interesting because for the first time we're going to refer specifically to the seventh day, the day of rest, the Shabbat, the Sabbath, as they call it in English. Let's talk about a little bit about that. In our Jewish tradition, when we are going to welcome the Shabbat on Friday afternoon, we recite a poem called Lecha Dodi. It's like, come, bride, the Shabbat is the bride. And it's some kind of marriage between Israel, the Shabbat, and God that day, that moment. So we are really getting united in Shabbat with God. So one of the verses says, the Shabbat was first in the thought of God, but it was last in his creation. It was the last day. But it was first in the plan of God for his creation. So the object, the purpose of the entire creation is Shabbat. Nothing more and nothing less. So we have to pay attention to Shabbat. Because that's the purpose of creation. The 7 days is the culmination, is the whole purpose of these 6 previous days. It's a very, very important, not day in this case, but purpose, goal, end. And we're talking about what God wants for his creation, which is endless. So this endless Shabbat, the 7th day. So that's the purpose. We're here now. We are not in the 7th day yet. We're not in the 7th millennium yet. We haven't get into that stage of God's creation, the most sublime, again, the purpose of creation. We are in the process of assimilating, understanding, grasping what that means. So it's like we need 6 days of labor in order to realize the 7th day, the purpose of creation. In other words, we don't come here like automatically knowing what Shabbat is. We don't. We need 6 previous days in order to know what the Sabbath is. There's a process. We just don't get the Shabbat like automatically. It's like in one day everything is done, everything is contained in one day. There's no need to work 6 previous days or anything like that because we are already there. No. God planned it in a way in which, in order for you to know the purpose of God's creation, you have to go through a process. Thousands of years of learning what is the final purpose of God's creation, which is the Sabbath. What is the Sabbath? That we have said before, yes, is that a state of consciousness in which we're one with God and the Torah is one with God and with Israel. Yes, we said that. But it's not an static state of consciousness. It's like we get there and then what? No, nothing. That's it. No. There's a purpose. We see clearly that God's creation is a dynamic process. It's not like a static thing. We have no idea. Some people sometimes we should think sometimes about how fast this planet is moving around the sun, and how fast the sun is moving around the galaxy, and how fast this galaxy is moving around a center in a universe, in this universe. I have no idea how fast it is. It's like thousands of kilometers per second. Boom, we don't know. We don't feel it. We're like literally, as someone said many years ago, in a starship, called Earth. It's a planet. I mean, it's like a spaceship. We're in this spaceship moving around. I mean, it's traveling. It's an interesting metaphor. We are traveling. Yeah, but we're in the solar system and we're part of a galaxy and then we're there and that's it. Yeah, we're going somewhere. We are. Yeah, but we're like going around in circles. We're going in circles somewhere. In other words, let's not try to limit our consciousness to the narrowness of immediacy. Like, oh, this is what it is, this is what I perceive, this is what my senses perceive, my understanding perceives. There's something that we cannot tap, that we cannot grasp, that we cannot perceive, that we cannot see or hear or sense, taste, even smell. We don't, but it's there. And it's a process to get there. But of course, we're humans, we are control freaks, we want to know everything immediately, we want to have control about everything, and follow that control. For what? It's like basically to fulfill our ego, like ego's fantasies and illusion of control. It's like we are gods now. We know how nature works, therefore we know how to control it. Which is not true. We still cannot control nature. Can't. But it's this controlling desire out of egos, fantasies and illusions, to be in control. And then in that process we get stuck. We don't go anywhere. We get there in that fantasy. And we miss what's going on really. We miss the journey. We miss the drive towards that goal. We miss the whole thing. So we get trapped in our egotism, in our selfishness, in our greed, in our envy, in our lust. And then we miss what's going on with life, the goodness of life. We ignore the goodness of life in order to be engaged in fantasies and illusions that have nothing to do with life. We actually put life in function of our own fantasies. That's the controlling, the freakness of control. So it's like, yeah, we're in this planet, we get stuck here, we're born, we die, so what? There's nothing going on. Wow, it's boring. It's a pretty boring approach to life. It's so limited. It's like we are imposing in our consciousness restrictions and limitations. We have built our own prisons. It's unbelievable. It's pretty stupid, but that's the way it is. We are. It's like one night we just go out and look at the stars for a moment, even a sunset, even nature, a brook, a river, a waterfall, a big mountain. And then it's like this, everything has a purpose here. And it's not necessarily the purpose of entertaining us. It's like we look for entertainment. We want Vegas, we want Hollywood, we want this, we want that, we want sports. We need to be entertained, to kill the time, basically. And then the time passes, and then the fantasy is over, and then we have to go to another fantasy called survival, which is not that much fantasy because we need to eat, and we need a roof. But you know what I mean. So let's go back to Shabbos. I mean, in other words, we're not going to debate about how narrow-minded and how limited we are. No. We know that already. Let's concentrate in what Shabbat means in the Jewish tradition. Because Shabbat, by the way, is something for the Jews. It's not for the nations. The nation, they celebrate Sunday, and I don't know what other days they have, but this is for Judaism. So if you're interested, you're not Jewish, but you're interested, you're welcome to learn. This is open. So, why this emphasis of the Creator to Israel to say, hey, don't work on Shabbat, otherwise you're going to be put to death. It's like, it's not a condition. It's not even a warning. Yeah, but it is. You know, it's like if you do this, this is what's going to happen to you. Yes, semantically, you're right. But let's talk about cause and effect more than if you don't do that, I'm going to punish you. Let's try to be practical about these things. If we're talking about the transcendence of being with God, which we cannot understand actually what transcendence is, because we live and we die. So what transcendency or transcendence are we talking about here? None. We die, so we're not transcending anywhere. We're finite. We have a limited span. Yeah, but Shabbat is transcendent. It's a place in which you enter, and there's no time and space, there's no limitations whatsoever. We enter an entire different dimension in which material references do not apply. Those are the labors of the 6 days. They do not apply in the context of Shabbos. They don't. So, if we bring those references to Shabbos, we're dead. In other words, death in terms of missing what is the experience of living the transcendence of the 7th day in our consciousness. This is about consciousness here. We cannot prove that Shabbat is outside reality when the day comes. We still have a sun, the moon, we still are in this planet. It's like, technically, I mean, like evidently in terms of empiric experience, we're here. We really don't go anywhere. But the Torah is telling us, no, this is not about a place or a time in your material reality. This is a place and time in another dimension where there is no place and time called God. Therefore, don't bring anything material, any material reference that will limit your experience here in this place and time called Shabbat. Do not. The moment you do that, you are out of the picture. You yourself, it's not that we're going to punish you, as it says here, that it's going to be put to death. He will be put to death himself or herself. And death, in this case, is missing the real life in this endless dimension called Shabbat. That's what it is. So it's like in the same way that we are deaf about things that are good, that we cannot experience, we're not allowed, or we don't allow ourselves. Missing that experience is being deaf to that experience. It's like not being happy, for instance. People who are angry all the time, they are upset, they complain, everything bothers them, whatever, like what in modern psychiatry is called neurosis. They don't associate with anything around. They're completely separated from reality, living in their own reality, in their own world. These people are deaf to a non-neurotic state. So in other words, everything that is happening, that is empathy, that is associated, that is harmonically and functionally and happily related to my surroundings, if I am not experiencing that, I'm dead to that happiness. I'm dead to the goodness. I'm dead to that plenitude of the joy of being happy. So I think that this is one of the deeper ways to understand pure and impure, sacred and profane. That's the whole point. It's like we cannot be contaminated with anything dead. A dead body. It's symbolizing a dead body. The moment we touch a dead body, we're contaminated. Death is, we touch death. How can we illustrate death? A dead body. That's the best way to illustrate death. That's why the Torah is saying, do not touch a dead body. When you become impure. You're death, basically. You touch death, you're death. But again, in a deeper level, in other words, nothing's going to happen if we touch a dead body. Technically, we're not going to die or anything like that. But the idea is, what is the lesson behind? What is the Torah is telling us by not touching dead things? Or impure animals, eating impure animals. What is the whole point? Not to associate our consciousness to what they represent, which is death. So let's try to understand this in a deeper level. It's not like, it's going to be put to death because he was working on Shabbat. Yes, that's what it says. And that's what it is. That's what it was before. We just try to understand what is the point of not working, not doing labor on Shabbat. Now, let's think about it. Because one of the things in the Jewish tradition is that we have denied so many things throughout history from our Torah for defending ethics, morals, principles, goodness in life. Our sages dedicated 99% of all the study, the Talmud, the principles of Judaism, on ethics, goodness. We have to live for goodness. We have to live for ethics. That's the basis, the fundamentals of Judaism. Goodness. Make goodness prevail. That's called ethics. But what about goodness? Let's talk about goodness every once in a while. Yeah. We have to learn how to behave with each other, to respect each other. What for? For the sake of goodness. The same principle, the same approach, we want to invite this approach to apply it on Shabbat. We have 39 fences. 39 labors that we are not allowed, we are banned to do on Shabbat. So our sages call it fences, like walls, to protect the Shabbat. So we don't light fire, we don't move things that are not necessary to move, we don't carry things from one place to the other that are not necessary. Many things. We don't brush. We don't do many things. 39 plus their modern implications. Sow, plant in the field, that kind of thing. Plow the fields. This is work, labor. So we don't them. So we basically guard Shabbat. We protect Shabbat. We guard it by not doing those things. But most of us really miss what is Shabbat. What is that I am protecting so much that deserve and demands such protection? It has to be something extremely precious that we have to guard with 39 fences plus. It has to be something extremely priceless. It is. Of course it is. It is so priceless that if we work, we're dead. We're not going to be able to get what that is if we have the material references to measure and to experience Shabbat. So we have to pay attention. It's like, wow, this is a major gift of God to Israel. And what is this major? What is so big, this gift? Because it's basically being with God. That's what Shabbat is. So we cannot bring our work from the previous day and from the following day to this state of consciousness. Let's not call it Shabbat or day, a state of consciousness. A state of stillness, cessation of work. Yeah, we call it a stillness because we really don't know in our consciousness what's going on when Shabbat enter. We don't know. We keep our, we eat, we have fun, we sing, we dance, we pray, we study. We have a special routine in Shabbat. We do observant people. And we're happy, of course. But there's an inner experience that is happening at the same time. Even if we don't sing, even if we don't pray, even if we don't eat a lot, something is happening in the consciousness of every Jew, every Shabbat. So the invitation is the Torah is telling us that it's so precious, that God is there with us on Shabbat. Let's start thinking. Let's start perceiving. Let's start trying to connect to what Shabbat means. What is. Really, it's like one day, I don't want to think about anything. I want to connect there. Really, and then start feeling things. And we don't know. We don't know how to read those feelings, that sensation. Some kind of joy sometimes, some kind of yearning sometimes, kind of excitement sometimes, quietness sometimes. Because we really don't know. It's beyond our this material consciousness. It's so important. It's like, if we really want to know about mysteries, we want to know how the universe is, antimatter, black holes, quantum physics, we really want to know things that are mysterious, that are not revealed, in our understanding to our eyes. You have to understand it to deep discerning, deep thinking, How about Shabbat? So it's like by not by the Torah telling us what not to do, by the Torah telling us by refraining ourselves from doing things, is telling us a little bit about Shabbat. It's like, you're not going to do these things. You're not going to do practically nothing. I mean, like, in terms of labors, work. Pay attention to what you're going to get if you don't do that. That's what it's telling us. So it's not doing nothing for doing nothing, or not working for not working. It's a purpose. So let's pay attention to that. Now, we have said before that the purpose of creation is about the seventh day. It's like, that's it. Hakadosh Baruch Hu, our Creator, said, I ceased from all activity now. From now, everything is going to be like, boom, like automatic. Then we start figuring out, what do we do the 6 days before? We build the consciousness with which we're going to welcome, we're going to enter, we're going to assimilate, we're going to experience the seventh day. So it says clearly here, 6 days shall work be done. It doesn't say you will work 6 days. The semantics of in the Hebrew doesn't say that. You could have said, you will work 6 days. The work shall be done. I would say, just ask legitimate question. What kind of work? Yes, survival. Yes, of course, we have to work to survive. Yeah. But what else? I mean, if we anticipate Shabbat, the 6 previous days, what kind of work shall be done in order to get to the 7th day? That's the question that we have to ask. So in this case, it's a preparation process, as we were saying from the beginning. It's like God is not giving you Shabbat from day one. That's it. This is it. No. He's telling you there is a process. You have to work 6 days. You have to do work. So you will know what awaits you the 7th day. Then we do that. We study Torah. And we study what is the purpose of these 6 days. What are we learning? What I have to leave behind, to put aside, in order to enter to this special day of rest. There is not necessarily a learning process. Yeah, it is a learning process, but it's a process of detachment. It's like, yeah, we are attached to what we create in our own minds, out of egos, fantasies, and illusions, out of feelings and beliefs of lack, out of ideologies, out of cultural, whatever. You know, we have to get rid of things that are not part of that 7th day. That's the lesson here. So it's like, don't bring work here. It's like whatever makes you dependent, attached, controlled, dominated, whatever, dependent of material duties, don't bring it to that day. So it's like we have to build work, we have to do work, we have to do positive work. We have to do the work of goodness, really, in order to enter that day. That's the whole lesson of the 6 days. It's not just doing work for survival. We have to do it right. Work shall be done. It's like we're building something here. Positive. In order to get to that 7th day as a reward for the goodness we have been planting and harvesting since day 1 to day 6. That's the whole point. So it's like the whole 6 days is to work on goodness for goodness. So the 7th day is like, it's done. I did good all these 6 past days. In order to enter a place that is goodness but is beyond our conception of goodness. It's the goodness that is really good, that we cannot even grasp. It's God. So God is putting on here saying there's 6 days and there's 7 days. So you can distinguish between what is profane, what is sacred, and what is profane. Israel and the nations, light and darkness. So it's a learning process in that context to distinguish. So the 6 days is to distinguish, is to discern what we have to choose in order to get to the 7th day. So in this sense, we have said in our commentaries on the Messianic consciousness in Jewish prophecy that the Messianic consciousness and the final redemption is this final Shabbat, this 7th day, this purpose of the entire creation. And then we have to prepare to integrate, to assimilate that consciousness of redemption, which is based on goodness. Therefore, we have to work the previous days of the week, the entire life, prepare our consciousness in the goodness of what the final redemption is. So it's like, it's not about doing evil 6 days and then, the 7th day stop because, I have to be good the 7th day. No. It's like from day 1, Sunday through Friday, we have to do work. We have to be good. We have to choose goodness. We have to learn the process to make goodness prevail every day. It's difficult the first days, more difficult the 7th day. Maybe by the midweek, it's very hard. But that's the purpose. That's what awaits us at the end, the goodness. So we have to start creating goodness from the beginning so we can harvest it every day, not just at the end, every day up until the end, in which we enter to a whole different dimension, which is the Messianic consciousness, which is the final redemption. Once we get there, God will tell us what is next. We have no idea. The references will be completely different. As the references of Shabbat are different than the references of the 6 previous days. So Shabbat is amazingly good. It's unbelievable how good it is. And people ignore it, really. You take it like another day. So let's focus on this subject of the Shabbat. Later, the portion talks about the building again of the tabernacle, of the process, the participation of the people, bringing the people offerings to the tabernacle. And again, let's understand the tabernacle in reference to Shabbat. Why? Because the tabernacle, as we said at the beginning, represents our permanent connection with God. And once we are permanently connected with our Creator, that's Shabbat. That's why Shabbat and the building of the tabernacle are mentioned there. Okay, it was an honor to share with you all these messages, beautiful messages, to redeem our consciousness, redeem ourselves from what is not necessary anymore, what actually haven't been necessary throughout our existence, which is the negative trends in consciousness, egos, fantasies, and illusions, and the negative outcome. That we don't need. We need exactly the opposite, which is goodness. That's the goodness from which we came and the goodness to where we're going. Have a blessed rest of the week, a week full of abundant blessings, of goodness, of love's ways and attributes. Shabbat Shalom, and until next